In the early 1970s, the United States Air Force faced a terrifying problem. The Cold War was at its peak, and military planners realized that if a full-scale war with the Soviet Union ever broke out, the United States would need to move tanks, troops, fuel, and supplies across oceans in a matter of hours, not days. But there was one problem. The aircraft they relied on were simply not good enough. Runways could be bombed, crippled, or completely destroyed. Traditional cargo planes needed long, perfect strips of concrete. In a world where nuclear weapons could erase air bases overnight, that was a fatal weakness. And that is when Boeing proposed something that looked like it came from the future, or from science fiction. The aircraft was called the Boeing YC-14, and at first glance, it looked wrong. Its engines were not under the wings, but mounted high and forward, blowing powerful jets of air directly over the wings. Its wings were huge and thick, curved in strange ways. Everything about it was designed for one impossible mission: to take off and land in incredibly short distances, even from rough, damaged, or improvised runways. The Air Force wanted a machine that could deliver heavy armored vehicles directly to the front lines, and Boeing believed it had created exactly that aircraft. The YC-14 was part of a secret and extremely serious program called AMST, the Advanced Medium STOL Transport Competition. Two companies competed: Boeing with the YC-14 and McDonnell Douglas with the YC-15. Both were experimental machines. Both were radical. And both were weapons of logistics. Because in modern war, the side that moves supplies fastest wins. When the YC-14 rolled out of the hangar for the first time, engineers were both proud and nervous. This aircraft was using an aerodynamic concept known as upper surface blowing. Its engines blasted air directly over the top of the wings, dramatically increasing lift even at low speed. This allowed the plane to rise into the air after rolling only a few hundred meters. In tests, the aircraft stunned the Air Force. It could take off in distances shorter than some bombers needed just to start rolling. The plane first flew in 1976, and what followed shocked nearly everyone who saw it. The YC-14 could land on runways that were barely airstrips. It could lift heavy loads and still handle rough field conditions. It was stable, predictable, and far safer than many had expected. In demonstrations, it outperformed expectations again and again. Air Force observers began to believe that they were witnessing the future of military airlift. But then something strange happened. Despite its incredible performance, despite successful test flights, despite meeting or exceeding almost every requirement, the U.S. Air Force quietly began to lose interest. On paper, the YC-14 was almost perfect. So why did the most powerful Air Force in the world abandon it? The answer lies not in engineering, but in money, politics, and a shift in how wars were expected to be fought. By the late 1970s, military strategy had changed. Instead of expecting nuclear chaos and shattered runways across Europe, planners started to believe wars would be more controlled, more regional. The urgency for extreme short takeoff capability began to fade. At the same time, the U.S. Air Force was drowning in expensive programs. Tanks, submarines, missiles, and new fighter jets were consuming massive budgets. The YC-14, once seen as revolutionary, began to look like a luxury. At the same time, the Air Force already had something else in mind: the idea of simply building bigger, more traditional transport planes. Instead of radical new aircraft, they wanted reliable giants that could use standard runways and move enormous loads over long distances. Convenience was winning over innovation. Boeing, meanwhile, had poured its heart into the YC-14. They built 2 prototypes. Test pilots praised it. Engineers refined its systems. But behind closed doors, the funding began to dry up. The AMST program was canceled before it ever produced an operational aircraft. Both the YC-14 and the YC-15 were victims. Ironically, the YC-15's DNA would eventually inspire the C-17 Globemaster III years later, but the YC-14, arguably the more radical and impressive machine, faded into obscurity.
One of the greatest tragedies of the YC-14 story is what it could have changed. Imagine large transport aircraft landing directly beside advancing troops. Imagine tanks being delivered to tiny forward bases. Imagine runways no longer mattering. The YC-14 could have rewritten the rules of war logistics. But the U.S. Air Force chose safety over risk. They chose familiarity over revolution. And they chose to abandon what may have been the best transport aircraft concept ever created. Today, the remaining YC-14 prototypes sit silent. One rests in a museum in Arizona, gathering dust. Its engines no longer scream across the desert sky. Its wings no longer blow air over their surface in defiance of traditional flight. Visitors walk past it without realizing what they're looking at. They are walking past a machine that scared strategists, a machine that frightened budget planners, and a machine that was too advanced for the world that built it. The Boeing YC-14 was not a failure of engineering. It was a failure of imagination, a failure of courage, and a lesson in how even the greatest ideas can be killed quietly by politics and shifting priorities. In another world, the skies today would be filled with short runway cargo planes landing on dirt strips, highways, and battle-damaged airfields. In another world, this aircraft would have saved countless lives. But in our world, the YC-14 remains a ghost of a future that never came. A transport aircraft so good, the Air Force had to walk away from it.